Holy sweet cinnamon titty Jesus, motherfuckers. We're back with another episode of World 1-1 Podcast. As usual, before we get into the good stuff, all the places you can and should find us at our home at world11.podbean.com, all spelled out, all one word. For your audio fixins, you can also pick us up at Apple Podcasts, Google Play Music, Spotify, and iHeartRadio. If you need to inject us directly into your eyeballs, you can pick us up as we record live right the hell now on our Twitch channel and catch the rerun on our spiffy little YouTube channel. To keep up on all the news and updates, of course, Facebook and Twitter are the places to find us. Now, with all that bullshit out the way, let's get to the fun shit. As always, I am your host, Larry the Bearded Wonder. Joining me tonight, Eddie Blackman V.
Can we get a Space Harrier remake?
No, absolutely not.
We need one. Designed
Kathy?
by Treasure.
Jesus. Kathy, Lord of the Stream.
Hello, everyone.
Josh the LeGroux.
Hello.
Dylan Drinky Pants.
Yep.
And we are joined by very, very special guests tonight. Super excited to have Matt motherfucking Bittner.
Hi, I'm a developer for a robot named Fight.
Super, super pumped. If you guys have been listening to us for the last few episodes, you'll know that I especially have been digging into Robot Named Fight. I reached out to Matt, and Matt was kind enough to say yes, blindly volunteering himself for our three-ring circus of insanity. So, Kathy's already tired of my bullshit.
Just started, Kathy.
So, let's jump in. So we're going to chuck the usual format out the window. We're just going all in tonight. Matt, I want to kind of turn it over to you to start with. Tell us a little bit about yourself, your background, and how did you get to a Robot Named Fight?
Yeah, sure. Let's see. I'm Matt. For a long time, I worked at a Petco. I got an English degree at the college in the city where I was born. Like no real education or background or anything like that. But then eventually taught myself like ActionScript 3 programming, doing Flash. So I started making Flash games. And then from there, I ended up getting a job making games for a mobile game company called HitSense. We put out a game called Draw Stickman Epic. There's another one called Battle Pillars, but that's kind of where I like learned to program, learn Unity development and everything like that. And after being there for 4 or 5 years, my grandmother passed away and I ended up leaving that job. And that's when I started a Robot Named Fight, which I worked on for like about a year and then put out. It was released in 2016, September. And I started on it the year before that, I think. Or did it come out in 17? Maybe it came out in 2017. I don't know. It's been a minute. Yeah. And I started on it in 2016. But yeah, that's the gist of it. The short version.
Right on. Now, correct me if I'm wrong, but for the most part, Robot Named Fight was pretty much just a one-man crew game. It was just you, correct?
Yeah, it was pretty much entirely me. My wife helped with social media marketing and some of the publishing stuff. When we launched the game, I hired a PR company, Novi, to like help market it and stuff. And I had a friend that I worked with at HitSense do some of the promotional art and everything. But as far as what you see in the actual game, that's all me. Sound and music, graphics, programming, etc.
That's a whole lot to take in under one umbrella, or just to one person to be able to do everything fully rounded out. That's impressive as all get out. I say I can only think of we've had one other person on a few years back that kind of did that same mass undertaking as a one-man show, and so I marvel at anybody that can pull all that off by themselves. So, I'm dying to know here. Part of this is super obvious, or at least I would fathom so. Some of the influence for you for a Robot Named Fight. You know, there's one game that kind of stands out as a very obvious influence. But I'm
Are you talking about Zombie Ate My Neighbors again?
absolutely. That's the one. How'd you know? But I'm curious what some of the others are that have snuck in and maybe more subtly that aren't as immediately noticeable.
Yeah, well, I mean, the game itself is like largely influenced by like Binding of Isaac and Super Metroid. Like
Okay.
you play either of those games, and you play a Robot Named Fight, you're gonna see those games influenced pretty strongly. But otherwise, like Contra, Mega Man X, like a lot of classic Super Nintendo shooters. Like I tried to run the gamut and look at a lot of stuff and like put little homages to different old games that I used to play, like back in the early '90s. throughout the game.
Super Turrican.
Yeah, well, I've never played Super Turrican, but everybody
Really?
yeah, everybody says like, "Yo, your game looks dead up like Super Turrican." And I've watched it since then and been like, "Yeah, I guess you're right. Like, it does." But I actually haven't played Super Turrican. A handful of old TurboGrafx games, Alien Crush, and then like, I don't know, weird movies. John Carpenter's The Thing, David Cronenberg films, stuff like that.
Okay.
Now, have you started working on anything else, or are you just kind of resting on your laurels with Zombie Named Fight?
I'm working on a handful of things right now. I'm working on a pinball game,
Okay.
All
which I
right.
guess is kind of public, but that just started. We'll see where it goes, and then it's been kind of a research period. Like I've been working on some machine learning stuff, and I've been working with Blender, like trying to teach myself how to 3D model, and like learning a bunch of different new little skills and trying to piece stuff together. Worked with some RPG stuff for a bit, so
Nice. Yeah.
just trying to figure out where to go next with some of that. And then I'm still working on a Robot Named Fight. Like that's the big thing with it is I'm always putting out new content.
Always doing something with it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Now you being an English major and writing and everything, how did you come about the story for writing this game?
Man, I've had that forever. It's very much like an inversion of the classic robots take over humanity, and the humanity has to fight against the robots. It's the robots have to defend themselves against meat from space. But then in messing with that, I wanted to play with like some ideas around deep time and history. And like if you played the game, kind of later on you learn the origins of the Mega Beast and kind of where all that comes from. So
Ooh, I haven't
did you-
gotten to that yet.
oh, you haven't gotten to that? Yeah.
No, it's still thoroughly kicking my ass. Trust me.
Did you?
I think like Terminator 2 is a good touchstone for like, I don't know, the
Did you
story,
ever-
or even Mega Man X, I guess.
Did you ever think about, starting off from a B movie perspective, or you were just like, this is kind of a not cliche sci-fi kind of thing, but like this is a starting point, and then I can expand from there.
Well, yeah, definitely like old like melt films and like 80s horror stuff like The Stuff or Ghoulies or like that kind of like campy 80s horror. That definitely was an influence, I'd say. And like the game, I tried to make it in Flash like 10 years ago, right? So there's this version out there called My Robot Is Fight that you can maybe find on Congregate. It's really crappy. I'm ashamed of it, but it was all in like broken English, and like it was intended to be very like, I don't know. You have no chance to survive. Make your time. All your bases belong to us. Kind of.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
So-
Go ahead.
yeah, go ahead. You.
Oh, so
I can do this all night. If you guys don't jump in, I will totally fucking steamroll this.
So I kind of hinted a question at you earlier, and there's a game called Chasm that's out that has kind of the same
Oh, yeah.
idea of a Metroid roguelike style game. What are your thoughts of this now becoming the thing? Because roguelike games are not really discussed among a lot of people, and mixing them in this Metroidvania style genre of games is kind of like slowly coming about, but it's not really there yet. What is your thoughts about it? Like when you look at Chasm, then you look at your game.
Chasm did a lot of things differently. Like Chasm, for one, I don't know if you could call it like a true roguelike because it doesn't have permadeath. Like it's just kind of a randomly generated Metroidvania that you start out and you play all the way through. I had the idea for a Robot Named Fight back in, I don't know. It was a while back, and as soon as I started on it, I looked up other games that were doing it, and it was like, okay, Chasm's the big one. That's the other game that's going to come out that I have to worry about it. But really, what blindsided me is like before A Robot Named Fight came out, Dead Cells jumped on the Steam shop in early access or whatever, and it was like the other Roguevania. And it did things very different. I'd argue it's more Vania than Metroid, and mine's very Metroid. But I'm glad the genre exists, and I'm hoping like several games are coming out, and everybody's trying different things with how to achieve like this idea of an infinitely replayable Metroid. So hopefully that continues, and people are able to like improve it. Like I don't think I nailed it with A Robot Named Fight by any means. I think
Sure, I'm kind of feeling like you did.
Well, I appreciate that. I've rewritten the map generation, once entirely in development, and then since the game's launched, like the most recent patch in the Coolant Sewers, I pretty much rewrote how maps are laid out in big, broad ways. So I think there's still a lot of work that can be done to like intelligently create this random Metroidvania feel. Like there's a lot of stuff to consider. I don't know.
Right. If there was like one thing you could go back and like do better or again in the game, what would it be?
Oh man, that changes daily. I look at it now and I just see mistakes, of course. So like, I think a big one would be like the boss fights could be improved. Like, especially, I just got through, we were talking about this before the podcast, but like Blazing Chrome came out and it has all these amazing cinematographic boss fights and like very memorable moments. And the bosses in A Robot Named Fight, a lot of them are kind of pushovers. They're close to those Isaac style bosses that have 3 or 4 moves and things like that. So I've been trying since release to add more compelling like bosses or more memorable moments, I think. Like the game from moment to moment feels real good, but I'd like there to be more like, oh yeah, that really stands out, and I don't know how that fit into a random
something like along the lines of like what Hollow Knight does, or more like another game closer to that category.
Yeah, maybe kind of like Hollow Knight. Hollow Knight has some really good boss design, and I think it has some really like, oh, I wandered in this area and I recognize it. It's very like breathtaking, that kind of thing.
I think you should take a look at a game called Iconoclast.
Iconoclast I've heard of.
Yes. Oh, and that was a game developed by one person also. It took him 7 years to make it. If you're looking for that kind of story and bosses, really take a look at that one, because not only does it deal with like religion, with the story and everything, it has some of the most creative sprites and boss fights, like really well done.
Right.
And so I think, take a look at it. Like look at the video and everything, or something. I think you might be surprised about that.
I just need to pick it up. Like, I've been meaning to for a minute. There's just so many games.
Iconoclast is definitely good, but as Metroidvanias go, it is extremely talky, story heavy, which is not something you get a lot of. Don't get me wrong, the story's good. But by comparison to most Metroidvania games, you don't usually get them that story heavy and narrative heavy.
Right.
True.
So
if you noticed in A Robot Named Fight, I'm not a big story guy. I don't like a lot of reading.
Well, I think like stories in games, when there's a balance of reading and writing in the game, it kind of gives you more meaning to actually fulfill the quest that's in that game. And I know a lot of Metroidvania style games, they really want people just to go in and just play, and if you want to find it, you can. But I think sometimes if you not say effort, but if you just put something there that's going to feel like immersive to the player, I think they appreciate it a little bit more. about it, because they'll be like, oh, this is a cool story that I didn't know, and I'm finding different parts of it.
Yeah.
So like tidbits of lore? Is that what you're saying, Eddie?
In a way, because like Metroid Prime, how Metroid Prime was, like how it told the story. If you explore throughout the world and scan stuff, you got more of an understanding, and it felt like the adventure was more satisfying because you're learning about this planet and these enemies and stuff like that.
I did like that in the Metroid Prime series, because it wasn't like in your face about it. Like, you had the option of doing it, and if you wanted to do it, you could go do it. You could look up it. You could scan everything in the world and read all about it. Even Doom, the new Doom 2016, which has, it's very light on story. I mean, it's there, but like it has that like log where you can go back.
God, I love that game. It's just pure amazing adrenaline, punching fucking demons in the face. Oh, I love it.
Fuck rules.
But the only problem,
I played it all recently, and I really love it.
the only problem with Doom though is that some of the fights are too long, and it's just like, carry this thing up. This is going for too long. I feel like they dragged some of the fights a little bit.
I don't know, man. That game is very well paced, like for what it is. It's just constant action. Like it's just I don't know.
But then
the soundtrack. Soundtrack of that game.
Soundtrack is good.
Just,
but when you need the right ammo and they don't give it to you, you be like, dang. Like they put the pressure on you sometimes. You're just like, dang it.
Yeah. The very last level in Doom 2016, like it's an endurance test just to go through those fights in a row, because it's just nonstop, like lockdown.
Yeah. If you could do like another genre of game, what do you think you would do?
Man, I've been really interested. Oh, go ahead.
I guess you would do something like Snatcher.
Like what?
Snatcher.
I've never played Snatcher. I don't know.
Oh, Snatcher was a game that Hideo Kojima made. It was like an FMV adventure game where the people on the planet, some of them were cyborgs. You had to kind of figure out who was a cyborg or not.
That's kind of cool.
Yeah. The TurboGrafx 16 that's coming to America, they're going to have Snatcher on it. And that's the second release that in America it had, because it was on the Sega CD, and not a lot of people played it.
Man, I'm definitely getting that. One of the old games, like I love the TurboGrafx 16. One of the old games I played on all the time was a game called Final Lap Twin. Has anybody heard of Final Lap Twin?
Yep.
I have.
It's like a racing RPG game.
Yes.
Where you like go from town to town or whatever. I've always wanted to like revisit that concept, only like a different style of racing, like not that kind of Mario Kart style racing, but like I don't know. That's been in the backlog for a bit. I've played around with that concept a little bit, and then.
So I'm curious.
So it's all these weird genre mixtures. It's like stuff that shouldn't fit together.
I'm curious to that end then. Not necessarily the Mario Kart style of racing, but what would you what kind of spin would you put to it?
Well, I don't know how much I want to reveal there, but there was I won't say anything directly to that, but I will say some racing games I really love. Super Nintendo had like a stunt racing game called Uniracers.
Yes.
That I really, really, really love. And I'd love to see that concept take a little further.
One of Miyamoto's unknown games that a lot of people kind of
forgot. I was obsessed with it.
Actually, kind of oddball-ish racing game that Kathy and I have been playing off and on for the last couple months on Switch. The next Penelope might be one to take a peek at.
Right on.
So you'd like to get into racing games if you weren't doing the Metroidvania types?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
They're pretty cool.
Racing RPGs. That's an idea.
That would be awesome.
I can get behind this.
You know who had that? Grid. Grid had an RPG-esque thing to it where like you developed your drivers and your team over the course of like, months and years or whatever, making your teammates better and, coercion and all that. That game was awesome. It was my favorite racing game. Number 2 was garbage though. Don't play it.
It's kind of
like took all the good stuff out.
it's kind of like Forza Horizon 4, like the Horizon series from Forza, that they're almost like a mix of racing and RPGs in it. That you go with different levels and stuff, but you do different races to get there. And sometimes you can just drive around the world, be destructive, and still raise up your level.
Yeah, it's kind of cool.
So I'm curious here, just because it fascinates me because it gives me infinite things to play, and that makes me utterly thrilled. Um, I'm curious to hear, what goes into making an engine that can basically randomly generate a cohesive, functional map for something like a Metroidvania on repeat like that, like what you've got here with Robot.
Man, so that was the task, right? Like everything else in the game,
I could fathom.
Kind of been done before. Like people have made platformers, people have made shooters. Like a lot of that is well tread territory. But like making a procedural Metroidvania, like, I tried several different things. Like there's a lot of random generation algorithms out there, but they're all designed around like they're a little too random, right? So there's no way to have that intended item route and that kind of like lock and key flow that Metroidvanias have. So the first thing was like looking at existing Metroidvanias, namely Super Metroid and everything from the Metroid series, Symphony of the Night, going through and like trying to classify and categorize the different kinds of paths, if that makes any sense. So like, there's like blocks you can slide under, or there's passageways where you can slide. There are like doors that are blocked off, and then there are rooms where you have like one section of a room blocked off from another section of a room. There are one-way passages, and there are like long drops that you can't get back up of. So starting from a standpoint of being able to hand design content, all the rooms in A Robot Named Fight are hand designed with all these different permutations for to account for different like traversal abilities or whatever. And then the map is generated after an intended item out order is kind of conceived of. So it'll go in and it'll look at like at this point, I think like 20 to 30. I don't know exactly how many items are traversal items, like items that help you get past obstacles, but it'll pick 7 of those, put them in an intended order, usually with like a final one that gives you kind of a flight capability. And then it'll use that order to create the map, if that makes any sense. So
Right. Okay.
And oh, go ahead.
No, shoot.
No, I was just gonna say, yeah, it uses like some pathfinding and some like really basic old stuff like that to be able to create those, to route through previously tread areas. And there's a couple tricks and a handful of things, but it's largely like, I don't know, it's like branches and spokes off those branches and then loops. Those are the kind of structures that it uses to put stuff together.
Right on. Very cool. So on the note of random, I'm curious here because I will freely admit I've poked around a little bit online, just kind of looking at some FAQs out of sheer curiosity at what's out there in Robot that I haven't gotten to yet. But one that I haven't found, and it may exist, and I just haven't looked hard enough. Why am I drawing a blank? Yeah, we can call them shrines, I suppose. The random little gods that let you donate your scrap.
Yeah.
I'm dying to know here. Is the outcome of what they do 100% random luck of the draw when you're donating your scrap in, or are there specific triggers?
There's a lot of different formulas that can help determine, like you can get reliable results from those things. There are recipes you can give them to get specific items, which or rather like there are item pools and you can kind of game those pools knowing what you're doing. There's a big hint as to what works if you're go to one of those shrines and you look at their UI up in the top left. That's all I'll say. But there's kind of a big hint as to how to use them. They're an element of the game that I may need to, I don't know, revisit at some point. It confuses a lot of people. And then once people figure it out, they're like, oh, I can wreck this game.
I don't know. I like the confusion. I was just kind of curious how fully random it was or was not.
Basically,
that
if you don't
fascinates
give them
me.
something specific, they'll kind of pick a random amount. Like the more you give them, the better the result. So if you give them a bunch of your good scrap or 99 scrap or whatever, like you'll usually get something good. But
Right. Okay. I gotta. I kind of want to hear from the source on this because this has been one of my favorite fucking parts of this game. The tutorial smith fucking kills me I shit you not, dude. Every time I get to the tutorial smith and I see something new, I screen cap it on my Switch to go back and laugh at again later. But what boggled me, especially the first time, I'm like, are you fucking kidding me? Is when he fucking cursed me. I'm like,
yeah.
I'm curious what made you pull the trigger to let the tutorial smith be a random dick.
I don't know. It just seemed appropriate for a roguelike. Like you've not invested too much at the start of the run. Some of the negative effects are a little harsh. I will say that. Like you start a run and you get like damage down or whatever. That's no fun. But you can quickly restart. If you're playing on Steam, by the way, you can do Shift R to like rapidly restart, kind of like Isaac.
Okay.
But it was also to kind of like scare people away. Like people that don't want bad things, they won't mess with them. But then people that are more adventurous are a little bit like, this is what's going on here. This doesn't make any sense. Give them something to explore. And it does. There are big rewards associated with that tutorial bot.
Okay.
The
So-
risk and reward system.
Yeah.
I saw a lot of people when they were reviewing the game. That was their biggest issue, was what a dick that guy was.
That is one thing.
I love the tutorial smith.
So I found that really interesting. But like you said,
Oh, and the other part of it is, I do want you to have an antagonistic relationship with that character for specific reasons that
right.
come clear later. But
Yeah, no, it was just funny because that was like the biggest complaint
Yeah.
I saw when
Everybody
people were
thinks that
reviewing. It's like, damn it!
You know, I gotta say, for somebody that isn't particularly nuts about dialogue and story in their game, in their Metroidvania, the little bits of dialogue that are in Robot fucking kill me. I absolutely adore. It's like, we must fight the storm of meat with all the guns.
I can make all the guns. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
The snippets that are there are pure gold. Like I just want more of it.
Yeah,
So-
I definitely have to add a little more of it and some going up there. So I'm glad y'all took it.
I know you kind of mentioned that Dead Cells kind of got in, at least on early access, about the same time you did. One of the things that came later for Dead Cells, at least in terms of Steam, was some Twitch integration where Twitch viewers can actually, kind of interact with and either help or dick with the person playing. Would you consider, or is that an idea that you've toyed with? And if so, how do you think something like that might play into Robot Named Fight, given that there is a drastic, difference between the two? And don't get me wrong, they technically fall into the same new fusion genre, but one definitely swings way one side and way the other.
Yeah, they're very different games. But man, as far as Twitch integration goes, I don't know. I'd have to just look at it. Like, I'd love to do things like that, but when you get into like online features or features that require like internet connection or anything like that, like there's a bunch of considerations that start coming into play for like live ops or managing things. I mean, not that you necessarily have to run live ops for having Twitch integration, but it seems like a lot of work. like
I would imagine
I'm
so.
being completely honest. Like for me alone, it seems like a big thing. It's probably not terrible to do. But I want to get it on Discord next. Like the things that would take priority over something like that would be like getting it on Discord. Like an online leaderboard would be nice. Just something where like people can, or daily runs, So
Right.
before adding like Twitch or Parsec support or anything like that, I have to get better at net programming.
Right. Okay.
Yeah. Well, what do you think about speed running in your game? Because you put that as an option.
Yeah, that
For it.
timer's front and center.
Oh yeah. I speedrun Super Metroid. I'm not good at it. I think I'm like 537th on Deer Tier. So like my in-game time is like 56 minutes or something. So it's not good. It's not great, especially compared to the people who just wreck that game. But I really liked the experience of speedrunning, and like sequence breaking is super fun.
Mm-hmm.
So I want to like work towards making that more of a part of Robot Named Fight. Right now, it has to be a little rigid with how much sequence breaking it allows you to do, simply because you can get soft locks because the map's completely random. Like you can't plan for every contingency. But
Right.
I've been trying to sneak in things that let you do that a little better.
Okay.
Do you think little traversal steps like wall running and like wall jumping and stuff? Do you think that might come into a Robot Named Fight?
I would like to add some like extended moveset stuff, some like hidden extended moveset stuff to the game. Some's already there, and a handful of people in Discord know about it. But I think more of that would be good. That's probably
Would
coming in some updates.
Would you like to share some of that with our audience of about 5 people that listen to this?
Yeah, sure. So wall jumping's not in there right now because I knew the game was very similar to Super Metroid. I didn't want to take lots of stuff from Super Metroid, so wall jumping was something I left out. I think I might add that in relatively soon.
I think
Yeah,
your
sure.
wall jump. I think your wall jumping would be more effective than Super Metroid's. Super Metroid's wall jumping is kind of difficult to pull off.
Oh no! If I added it, it'd be real difficult. I
Because
love it. Like once you know how to do it, it feels awesome. But
like Super Metroid's wall jumping is considered or compared to, in my opinion, to Strider's wall jumping on the NES. That
Okay.
it don't when you are pressing the right directions, it don't always response at all for
yeah,
it. So it would
It's
be kind of
very-
interesting.
perfectly timed. You got that frame where Samus is faced against the wall, but
Mhm.
I don't know. I think that would allow. Right now, the one place in the game where you can get stuck is if you like. There's a jump path, right? And it's
Yeah.
effectively one way. That's how you describe it. Is you have to jump up to get somewhere. If you manage to sequence break and later fall down that path without the right jumping capability, you're stuck down there. There's really no way up. Every other kind of gating mechanism in the game is two-way or something where you can get around it. If you can get around it one way, you can get around it the other way. But having wall jumping in there would eliminate soft locks from like falling in deep pits and not being able to get back up for the most part. That's why I'm thinking wall jumping might need to be in there.
What about wall running? Like running up a wall?
Oh, running up a wall, that'd have to be like its own item, I think. You don't want people to run directly to the Mega Beast. I mean, they could, but wall running would be fun. I like weird little techniques. Right now, there's slide jumping. You know how you can get slide?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
You can time it to where you can maintain your velocity from that slide with a jump and like get over certain barriers that you otherwise couldn't. So there's weird stuff like that. There's dash jumping. There's a handful of things. People have figured out how to clip through walls with the arachnomorph. Right now the speedrun record for a Robot Named Fight, I think, is like 3 minutes.
Jesus.
Yeah, I'll never be
Holy
doing that.
balls.
Wow.
You have to know the game inside out or cheat. I would say.
You
But
gotta
that's
get
it.
lucky. I mean, that's what it really is. You gotta get that perfect run where you can like, here's the
Right.
sequence, and I can go straight to the Mega Beast.
Wow.
So, it
Quick,
just-
before-
I know what it was.
Before you
Eddie,
go, Larry,
got it. Go.
would you add like a super turbo mode to it?
What's a super turbo mode?
Like okay, when the game
I
This
is
is
mean,
a
out,
specific
like-
mode that
like-
exists in Eddie's head.
See, it's
like
not just us, Eddie. It's not
like the
just us.
game,
Like a hard mode or like a New Game Plus kind of thing?
Well, in a way, like a challenge where it's the game is faster, but you know, you like every time you hit an enemy, a little bar at the bottom grows. But if you get hit, you lose your whole bar or it goes down. And so when your bar is full, you pull off a super move and can attack enemies like that and keep going. But the game is faster instead of the regular speed it is. Almost like, of course, Super Street Fighter 2.
Okay, I got you.
And that way.
Super Street Fighter.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah. But the
I mean,
turbo
something like that could maybe be fun. I don't know. I've been playing around with like secret seeds. Something like that would maybe make a good secret seed where like you enter a certain seed and the game's twice as fast or it's twice as slow. In the Cool Tours, I just introduced like the ice areas or whatever.
Mhm.
So secret seed where everything's slippery, stuff like that would be really fun.
Okay. I was gonna ask what made you decide to go the route you did with some of the items in terms of like abilities, where instead of there only being certain things that are energy weapons and certain things, only being modifications to your base weapon. What made you to opt to kind of go, okay, we can add a fire tweak to either or and make them drastically different still? Because it feels like you definitively went the extra mile on that rather than just kind of skating out going, this is the one fire thing or this is the one electricity thing.
Yeah, it honestly it was a practical decision because like I said, all the rooms are hand designed, right? And like to make the game like the randomness of the game feel justified, there has to be this huge item pool. So to allow for different experiences without having to design unique rooms for each item, that's why you get things like Arachnomorph and Slide both help you go under passageways. The Flamethrower and Firebolt both exist so that you can have that variation in your run without having to design like unique rooms for like here's a fire weapon, here's an acid weapon, here's an electric weapon, here's a like too many traversal options. Like it lets you reuse the same obstacles and just have a different way to get around them, I think.
And I like that fact quite a bit. One of the things that I appreciate is that, as you start a run, you'll run into one or two obstacles and you'll know that you're getting something in that wheelhouse, but you don't know if you're getting, a bolt modification or an energy weapon or what it's going to toss you to allow you past that.
Yeah,
and I
that's the
love
other big
that fact that it
I didn't
kind of
want you
keeps
to
on your
know
toes.
exactly what you were getting just because you saw a door that had white flesh on it or whatever.
Right. And that feels like an absolutely clever way to kind of keep the spark alive, keep the interest.
Yeah.
So
Did you ever have any like new ideas for weapons that didn't make the game or anything?
Oh man, there's a Google Doc full of them. Like, and then now that there's a Discord for the game now, and I get suggestions constantly. So like, there are tons and tons of stuff that are not in the game that may someday end up there. I could a big one was I want like a weapon that'll toggle platforms, like some kind of not an ice beam, but like there are invisible or kind of faded out platforms and you're able to shoot them or otherwise interact with them that make them solid, and that'd be a whole traversal thing. Like a napalm gun, things that combine mechanics that are already there. A lot of that'll show up. And then like since the game came out, I've added like 40 or so items, and a lot of that was stuff that just got scrapped for launch that came back in later.
okay.
Like the boomerang thing.
Right.
Would
You I would say you mentioned, toggling platforms, and the thing that comes to mind immediately is the address gun from Axiom Verge.
Yeah.
That's what I was about to ask.
So
That would definitely be the inspiration for that, probably.
right. So I'm going to say we've hit probably somewhere about the 45 mark on the recording. So I'd like to take the opportunity to give everybody a breather, and we'll be back in just a couple minutes right after we break. And we're back. So we're going to re-jump into our fantastic interview with our delightful guest, Matt Bittner from A Robot Named Fight. I want to toss one out here. This came by way of one of our other OG founders of the show, Adrian. Had a couple he wanted to drop at you here. Wanted to know, and I'm curious about this too, actually. Where did the inspiration for the name come from?
Okay. The name. Actually, I get a lot of shit for the name. Like if there's
you shouldn't. It's fucking awesome.
If there's criticism of the game, it's like the controls are sluggish or whatever, because I feel like old Super Metroid controls. And then this name is stupid.
That's not a criticism. That's a compliment. Damn it.
Yeah. So the name comes from Zach Parsons, who worked with like something awful or whatever. Like forever ago, had a book called My Tank Is Fight, right? And it was all about ridiculous, like oversized tanks from World War II, like just ridiculous machines or whatever. And I put out the Flash game, My Robot Is Fight, which was very inspired by that name. And then that just kind of gradually morphed into A Robot Named Fight. Like I thought it sounded kind of like spaghetti westernish, or it had this like, it didn't quite sound, I don't know. It didn't sound like an American name. Like it sounded like it went through a translator a couple times, and I liked that like distance that it put between, I don't know, players and whoever's reading it, I guess. So.
Right on.
The concept of fight, that's a big thing. Like,
yeah. So the other one, and I'm curious about this myself, and I don't know how much of it you can or can't, but on the off chance you can, I'm curious. And Adrian's inquiring too, as a developer himself. What's the process like to get up on Nintendo? I mean, Steam is kind of a free for all these days, but
and you get on Steam,
right? But obviously, getting onto a console platform is something of a different ball game, and from everything that I've read and heard, Nintendo especially is all kinds of hoops to jump through to land yourself on that platform.
It can be like it's weird because like once a publisher has published something on Nintendo, they can pretty much continue to publish things. So that's how you get some games on Nintendo that, like, I don't want to call anybody's game trash, but like not every game is as good as every other game, and you see some games on the Switch store that you're like, yeah.
A Girl Named Room, or that witch.
Oh God!
Okay.
Yeah.
I disavow any. But so like, yeah, I think it's hard for solo developers, like if you don't have like the right tax IDs and the whole like a company set up and a whole infrastructure or proof that you've published games on platforms before. Switch isn't particularly interested. Like it has to be a game that has a lot of buzz or something like that around it. I was able to get on Switch because I managed to strike a deal up with my former employer, HitSense. So you'll notice whenever you start the game up on Switch, it says published by HitSense. And they've kind of started this little net where they publish a lot of cool indie games. They just put out one called Ministry of Defense that honestly is really cool. It feels like Prince of Persia. There's one called Level 99 Axe God that's kind of a beat 'em up. It's kind of like Golden Axe style. So they were able to help me get on the platform because they kind of had the like business infrastructure to seem legitimate to Nintendo, to where they knew that they weren't like taking a risk or giving their dev kit to some guy in his house, which I am some guy in my house, as you can tell. So
Are you kind of surprised on how indies have grown on Switch to the point where now people want physical? Like the physical indies are more popular and wanted over AAA in some of the first party games. Are you surprised to see that shift?
Well, the move I am kind of surprised by the move towards like wanting physical games. because I made that like separation a long time ago when I switched over to Steam and started playing everything download only. Like I can't remember the last time I bought a physical game. So I'm like a person in that camp. But I think it's cool that people have moved in that direction. Like I don't know, there is something nice about holding it in your hand and seeing all that.
Because of like me and Larry, like we talk about limited run games. Like they just, even Nicholas, like they shot up doing indie games and physical, and by the time you actually try to get a copy, all of it's sold out. So whether it's collectible or not, people want them.
Yeah, tend to do real well. Yeah.
Have you considered doing like a limited run?
Yeah, I have. I'd love to get in contact with limited run games. If you are on Twitter and want to bother the out there, don't say that I said do that. But no, I've looked into doing physical copies of the game. We're exploring a handful of things right now. I'm not sure, like, if anything will come of it. There's like nothing official at all, but
because I think people double dip on Switch. Like they'll purchase it digitally, but they will buy it physically.
I did that with Fire Emblem. I bought the collector's edition of Fire Emblem. I'm waiting for it to come in, but I bought it digitally so I could have it right now.
Oh, I've double dipped on double, triple, and quadruple dipped on countless games, just because I wanted it when it came.
Hollow
And then Hollow Knight was a quad dip. But just because it came out digital and there was no word up front that there was going to be a physical, and then later on down the line, physical cropped up by way of LRG or anything like that. I'm like, yep, that's going on the shelf. Grab me one of those.
Well, and Matt, I want to ask, how would you design the instruction booklet if you was going to do a physical version?
Man. It would be really cool if I was able to do like an old school, like you saw how Binding of Isaac when they released their physical copy or whatever.
Yep.
Yes.
Yeah. I don't know what would be feasible, like, because I'd have to pay some designer. I'm not much of a hand drawn artist person myself, so. But I would like to have that old feel of like, here's 5 or 6 enemies and a little blurb on each of them, and like here's a dumb like kind of obvious hint. Here's like a black and white sketch drawing of this or that. Like that would be really cool. I always like the old instruction booklets. I used to honestly, I think this might have been illegal. I don't know that it matters. Statute of limitations run up. I'd rent them from game stores or whatever, and then I'd like photocopy the instructions.
Yeah.
I could like, just enjoy reading them, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely. My favorite thing about that's at least 30% of the reason I don't buy physical games anymore is because they don't come with instructions.
They don't come with anything, yeah.
It's just a disc, or in my greatest rage I've ever felt in my life, Halo 5 Collector's Edition came with a digital fucking code. Like it was in a sealed book.
Yeah.
You opened it up and it was a digital code.
That's the same as Wolfenstein Youngbloods now for Switch.
Dude, there is nothing more infuriating than opening up like this perfect steel book, like getting all your like lore and all this stuff that comes with it, and opening it and it's a digital download. You're just like,
slip of paper.
Oh man, yeah, that's infuriating. So I don't really buy physical anymore, except for if it's like a collector's edition or a limited run games or something like that, because they always throw in these nice little things that make it worth to me having a physical copy of something.
I still buy physical because I like the look of my library. I love just like looking at it and carrying the boxes. So I'm kind of that old school. I do some digital stuff, but I'm just like, when Limited Run did Iconoclast physical, I had to snatch it up quickly because it was just like, that was my game of the year when it came out after I played it on PlayStation.
And to now have this Nintendo box is great.
but to have that game on as physical, it's just like, this means more to me because I know that no one else is going to get a chance to get this because it's only limited. Like, so it's something kind of special to me when it comes to physical.
Hey, can I pull you guys for a hot take?
Yeah.
Sure.
Okay, what do y'all think of Google Stadia?
No.
I don't.
No. Okay.
No. Hard
I
no.
think the idea had potential, but when the details came out, it started falling apart.
Mhm.
Okay, what are the specific details
I think one of
that
the
you're not pumped about? Because I'll go ahead and spill the beans. I actually really
okay. So the Ubisoft thing, with their Plus thing, like you have to have that in order. I'm assuming you have to have that with Stadia, in order to play their game. So that's $15 on top of the $10 of Stadia or whatever you're playing to do all of that things. It's going to be weird on how all these companies are going to be putting their games on Stadia, and if you have to subscribe to each of them to stream their games.
Well, I think
So
from what I understand, like you don't have to pay for the service. Like you can pay to get the service in a good way. Like I do think they're like trying to upsell you on some monthly charge of like
Yeah.
subscribe and you get,
Oh yeah.
My
you get all
biggest
this or
issue.
whatever. But you can still but they are going to charge for games and but
Yeah.
the actual service itself is really interesting.
My biggest issue with it is that they're charging full price for games. Like it's a full $60 for games that not like you don't own it. Like you don't
Yeah.
own the game. Like
Right.
it's in Google's library. You're essentially paying to rent it and you have to pay the full price of the game. Now, if they wanted to like make all the $60 games $30 games and I have to pay for the subscription, okay, I'm more
Mhm.
in line with that. But I'm not paying $60 to not own my content.
I think
It's like you're streaming it, but you don't own the data.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Like Stadia had an opportunity to be a great middle ground between like Xbox Game Pass and
PS
owning a game. You know, it had a great opportunity to break down, you know, a cost barrier to entry to getting people to come play these games.
Mm-hmm.
I can see that. If the games are cheaper, that would be nice. Like, it'd be hard to argue against that. The thing
Yeah.
that really, that turned me onto it, or that I'm still kind of holding out hope for it, is like I love the idea of not being limited by hardware. Like, that's
Right.
the thing to me. The
But
fact
there's
that
stuff
they
out
can
there
do
that already does that. Like there's Shadow Play.
Oh, so there's already some streaming services that are.
Yeah, there's like oh man, there's this streaming service out there right now. And it's this company, I'm trying to remember the name of the company, but basically it's a warehouse full of like 2080 Ti's and like low latency servers that basically make it so where like say like my roommate uses it because he's got a lower end PC, but he pays for it. It's $15 a month and he's able to play games on ultra settings because
He's streaming it, yeah.
right.
Right.
Exactly.
But-
So
the thing I think with Google Stadia is that I don't think they have a strong launch.
No, they
Everybody's
don't.
going to be looking at this beta on how it plays out. And if people have already made a decision to get the AAA games on other consoles and platforms, why would you need to play just to stream it, just to show it off? People already can stream these games on Twitch or Mixer or whatever service that they want to use. So it doesn't make sense to have that platform unless they're really going to come with something that's going to be different, unique, that you can't get nowhere else. Because the only thing that you can maybe not get is their first party stuff. At the moment, everything else you can play. People been playing Assassin's Creed Odyssey.
Hmm.
and they paid full price for it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And,
Yeah, no kidding.
you know,
I feel like all the appeal of it is not like as a consumer, because I haven't looked at it that much, but as a developer, it seems really neat. Like
see it as
Right.
being able
I see
to
it
not
as a
have
good-
to write that code because it's just co-op, like it's just input being sent, and like
Yeah.
it speeds up all these things. So the concept of game streaming, I think, is maybe more exciting than Google Stadia, but
Right.
and the thing about it is, what games are people going to stream that is going to be different than what you're watching right now? Like if you're streaming and watching Fortnite, no disrespect to Fortnite or anything, like people have been doing that for other platforms. Even with Assassin's Creed and Destiny 2 with Shadowlands and stuff, when that comes out, it's people has been streaming that stuff and showing it off for everything and talking to different players and stuff. So what is it they're going to bring that's like completely exclusive to Google Stadia that no one else could stream before, you know? It just seems weird. And then like not having no internet, now you really can't play the game and stuff. The people who live in the sticks or the backwoods and their internet stuff, like what is Google going to be charging, or even the internet services? What are they going to be charging you to actually run Google Stadia and everything? Like I think there's going to be a lot of cost factor into everything with Stadia.
And I could see them. I could see them somewhere down the line, eventually or almost inevitably dropping that free tier. So.
Oh, where they like they make you pay.
Uh-huh.
See, I don't
think that'll happen.
That's what I thought. I thought it was subscription base of $9.99 is the base price that you start with. Like you have to pay that. Like what is it that you're getting for free for that? Just to buy the games?
Buy and be able to stream them at moderately
30 frames
settings.
If you wanted 4K or whatever, you had to pay.
Yeah, if you want 4K, I think you have to pay the extra. But like, you know, like, I don't run my games at 4K.
No, I don't. Yeah.
To play Doom at top settings, like, well, not top settings, but better than it looks on my computer.
So stuff that people are doing. So stuff people are already doing with their PC if it's up to streaming, like on Twitch or Mixer or something. They're already doing it. They have to pay for it when it comes to Google Stadia.
But they don't have to pay any extra. They just buy the game on Stadia. They don't get any data.
Right.
But they're able to stream it at any time. They've got an internet connection. You know, you're able to play it on your TV or hypothetically on your phone. You know, that's a weird thing.
Yeah, I like it. It's like a supplemental thing. Like if I'm at a hotel or something, I don't have to lug my whole system with me. I can just plug in my iPad and play it or whatever. I like it like that. But
is that it is this thing that like you can play wherever. Like you don't have to have. You can play on top settings wherever. Like you can play, like low end devices could hypothetically play really high end games. But anyways,
it's just contingent on your connection. Yeah.
And I really hope they just don't have no server problems. Like you playing it in the server jacked up and be like, I can't play this. Oh crap.
Right, and that's another piece that's kind of a turnoff. It's like, oh, our servers are down. That thing that you paid $60 for, you're not going to play that right now because we can't get our shit together because somebody broke our stuff.
That's a possibility. I guess with Steam you deal with that some. Like you can play it in offline mode, but still kind of a remote.
I'm definitely going to be looking at Wired, reading their magazines and Digital Foundry and people who are going to be covering this stuff to get more information, because I think they're going to be like, okay, this is what is with this platform. This is all the information we know. We're delivering it to you guys. So now you make up the decision if you want it or not. I don't think streaming games is the future of video gaming. I think it is. I think digital and physical is still going to be still going on. I just don't think that streaming a game it will have some business, but it won't be the forefront on how to get a hold of a game, I should say, and get some value and enjoyment of it. I think still people buying it digitally or physically is still going to be part of the business, and that's going to be how people are raised on getting games.
I think both will continue to be a thing, but I think AAA developers will really see this, like, they'll see the benefits, I think, of streaming and the fact that they don't have to develop for multiple hardware specs. Like, they don't have to make the game run on 100 billion different kinds of computers with different settings, specs, everything. They can design it for this one server computer that just streams out to everybody. Like, that's the stuff that's really, like, weird and compelling to me, because you could break these barriers of what consumer level hardware can do really fast. But I don't know that that'll happen. Like, I think it might flop, and
I will say for this conversation, for this thing, this is really more focused on PC than it is on console. I feel like PC and console has two separate businesses when it comes to delivering games to the customer or consumer.
That's true, and I'm like a big PC gamer for the most part, so I've gotten used to the whole Steam thing. And
yeah.
Uh-oh, Matt froze.
Oh no. Cause like I think with Stadia,
There
I
he
would
is.
like. Oh, I think with Stadia, I would love to see some Japanese and European arcade games that we didn't get to play here in America. That never came. Like I would love for Konami to put the whole Parodius collection on Stadia, and people stream it and get a touch of it. Your R-Type game, Larry, I would love people to like play that stuff. I think there's an arcade market that may fit Stadia that I think a lot of people will be into. I mean, it's working kind of for Switch in a sense, but like Stadia having an arcade, like an actual old school and some new school arcade games, I would love to see that.
I could see that. That's a piece I could definitely get behind. So we touched on it a little, and I'm kind of curious to hear a little more. Is there thoughts rattling around in your head for what might a Robot Named Fight Round 2 look like?
Yes, there's actually a pretty solid roadmap of like the next few updates that I want to put out. I don't want to like give away too much, but I am working on a new area, kind of on and off amongst other projects, so it may take a little longer to get out than the last one. But it's a new environment that would be an alt for the factory, and it is. I guess I can say there's probably some spoilers out there. I think I've leaked some things. It's a Crystal Caves kind of situation, like a mining facility looking thing. And you can see more of that on Patreon. I've got a Patreon. I'm going to plug it.
Oh yeah, go ahead.
Oh, yeah.
Robot Named Fight. So that's how I support continuing doing development. But like, if you want to see a few little like sneak peeks of it and stuff, it's on there. But then after that, I think the game will kind of veer in a wildly different direction. Like I have some in-game content that I want to add that kind of breaks the Metroidvania structure a little bit. I don't want to say much more than that, but like I've been kicking around for a while.
Right. I'm kind of curious, at what point do you decide to stop pumping new content into a Robot Named Fight and finally make a clean break and potentially do a full sequel? Or is a sequel anything you would even want to touch?
I have not decided that. That's a question I ask myself a lot, where I'm like, well, I want to continue supporting this thing, and there's already this great foundation in there, but there's stuff that I not do the same. I think if I could ever gain the financial grounding to like hire a team and work with other people, that's when I'd make that clean break and work on a sequel. But as long as
Adrian, if you hear that, there sounds like a job opportunity.
With this.
I hope Adrian doesn't like getting paid.
I don't know if he's getting paid much now already, so it might not be a big difference.
Would the sequel be a follow-up to the game after the game's ending? Would it be like a new clean slate, like a follow-up, or would you continue like a story within that time frame? Kind of almost like how Resident Evil 2 and 3 is. Like they're both running at the same time, but Resident Evil is considered.
I don't think I'd ever do anything that happened. Well, actually, that's a complete lie. I would do that, and I am in the process of doing that. I forgot. I am working on a project that's kind of like a parallel story. Like it takes place in that same world and kind of at that same time, but it doesn't.
Okay.
It doesn't really intersect at any point.
Right. Just
so it would be cool. Like I really loved in Shovel Knight with the Plague Knight campaign or whatever, where there was cool moments. Like that was always really neat. So I'm definitely open to stuff like that.
Quick question: have you heard of a game called Gigarect X EX?
Gigarect X?
Yeah, I think it's by Game Freak. Check it out on Switch because it almost looks something similar to your game, but I don't know if it's Metroidvania in a style. It was a game that came out like last month, like last month or in May, I think it came out.
I don't know. I'll check it out.
It's from the people with Game Freak. They made Timbo the Badass Elephant. They made that game, so they're making this one. And of course, if people know Pokemon, they made.
That's my.
Are they making the new Pokemon?
Yeah.
Cool. I haven't kept up with Pokemon. I should. I've never played a Pokemon game other than the current game. Yeah, it's weird.
I got some games I can let you borrow. Okay.
Right, I need to go play like Red and Blue and like learn my history, but it's one big gap.
I love Pokemon. That's my jam. It's Pokemon.
Right on.
So I'm curious. This is one that you touched on earlier on a similar subject, and I'm kind of curious because again, this excites me and it's a thing that I love dearly. You talked about maybe looking into doing something pinball-y. I'm curious what a Matt Bittner pinball game looks like. Head, at least.
I'm assuming Devil Crush.
Devil Crush rules. I've been listening to while I've been working on this pinball thing. I've been listening to the soundtracks to Alien Crush and the soundtracks to Devil Crush, like on repeat the whole time I'm working on them. The whole thing with this pinball game, it came about because I was over at my friend Andrew's house and we were playing Pinball Quest on NES. Do you know Pinball Quest on NES? Mm-hmm. It's like an RPG pinball game. Yeah. So it's more of a like exploratory, that kind of thing.
Okay.
It revolves around the co-op player and a robot named Fight. With those hints, you can probably piece together kind of what's going on. But yeah, I've got some ideas. I had to kind of course correct or whatever because have you heard of a game called Yoku's Island?
I was just gonna say I would be stunned if you have not played it, considering
I hadn't, and then I did. Like, oh, that's a lot of the ideas I was cooking up. So this will have to veer wildly. Again, this may never come out. It may not be a thing that I finish, but if I do, it is in that vein of like exploratory pinball.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Yoga Island Express is really, really good.
What is it?
Yes.
Yoga Island Express.
Right on.
Really, really good.
I would say the only other one pinball game out there that I think kind of touches the level of insanity that I
what to say.
There's only one. It's the most LSD fueled pinball game I've ever laid eyes on. Was Flipnik on PS2.
I've never played that, but it sounds good.
It is.
I fell in love with it because most every other pinball game doesn't really deviate from the fact that it's like, we're going to make a pinball table and just put it on a screen versus Flipnik says, oh, fuck that. This is a video game. We can do whatever the hell we want.
Yeah. I've been watching a lot of stuff that bends the rules of pinball. I forget the name of the game, but there's like an Arachnoid or Breakout clone or whatever, but it's like a auto-scrolling Breakout.
Did you look up Odama, that pinball game that came on the GameCube?
Oh God, yes. That's another weird one. Voice-controlled pinball warfare in feudal Japan.
Yep,
that's good.
Yeah,
good, weird.
It's Sonic Spinball.
Sonic Spinball, I definitely played a lot of. So.
Mm-hmm. But yeah,
thing goes.
Oh, actually, have you ever seen the Pac-Man pinball game?
I haven't. What's the Pac-Man pinball game?
So there's a combination of Pac-Man that you actually play Pac-Man, and when you get to a bonus, he rolls down to the bottom, and then you actually play Pac-Man in pinball form.
Oh, weird. So you switch from Pac-Man to pinball?
You switch from the arcade to the pinball game and back.
Right on. That's kind of fun.
Yeah, I seen that at the pinball expo, and I was just like, "What is this crazy game, and why do I love it?" And like, I wanted to roll the game out of the conference for my own.
Right on. Have you all ever seen Hyperball?
Yeah.
Hyperball rules. I was at an arcade expo, right? And what it is you've got these two like gun control turret things, right? It's not even really pinball, but it just shoots pinballs like rapid fire at all these different targets. And you have to like hit them as lightning's coming at you or whatever. It's like an actual physical table, but it's really great.
That sounds fucking awesome, and I want to play this now.
But yeah, it was the most fun not pinball game I've played.
So, limitations be damned. I mean,
Sure.
if anything and everything was at your disposal, what would the dream creation look like for you?
Oh man, that's a heavy question, and kind of probably depends on the day. But I am really interested in a handful of fields. Procedural generation is one of them. I'd like to see a game that has a very handcrafted feel as far as like plot and like important moments and like cinematic moments. That's the word I'm looking for. Things like that is procedurally generated. And I think like, I don't know, I'm looking into random technologies. Machine learning is really interesting to me. Things that are starting to be able to be done with that. So in the future, I'd like a game that would have the feel of a AAA production, but was all generated on the fly. Like that would be interesting. Something like a randomly generated Metroid Prime game with moments and cutscenes and stuff like that. Like how nitty gritty can you get with like making intelligent decisions about camera direction and things like that through procedural generation.
Okay.
Pretty vague, but that's the gist.
No, that's okay.
What is your favorite snack when you create, or just like your snack time? Like what is that snack? I always ask this every interview.
Okay.
No, you asked breakfast cereal, you dick.
Well, snack, breakfast cereal. Oh yeah, that is right.
And to be fair, it's been about 2 years.
Yeah.
Probably like black coffee.
Yes. That's what it's about.
That's what I
black
drink
coffee.
most. Yeah, and then peanut butter sandwiches, no jelly. That's weird, but
No,
you know,
it's the best.
Pop-Tarts?
Add some honey to it, man. Add some honey to the peanut butter sandwich.
Maybe I like the dry gumminess peanut butter. the umami or whatever it is.
Set it up. Set up the honey, dude. It's a game changer.
We had been having discussions of Pop-Tarts. Is that in your wheelhouse? Pop-Tarts?
I don't have any Pop-Tarts in my home.
Oh wow!
I haven't had Pop-Tarts in a very long time. I don't dislike them. I just don't. I haven't done it.
Well, do you have a favorite breakfast cereal? As Larry mentioned.
No.
Really?
I got my fucking mouth shut about that.
Shut up. I like to ask fun, odd questions that don't make you think sometimes.
So, real quick, I'm going to drop this in because we've dropped a few of these into the Twitch chat, but I want an opportunity for those that aren't catching us on Twitch that are catching the rerun later, be it on YouTube or on audio, to have a crack at some of this too. We've been doling out some very generously donated Steam keys for a robot named Fight in the Twitch chat. And so I'm going to toss one of these out here for those that are listening. It's, first come, first serve. If you're the first one to grab it, you got yourself a free game. We're going to throw out R3YP6Z9HZJ HYKKJ. There's a free copy for the first person that grabs that and sticks it in their Steam library for you. Merry Christmas. Say thank you to Matt. So
you're welcome.
But I'm curious what your cutting room floor looks like. What are some of the ideas and games that you've toyed around with, designing that just never fully formed or came to fruition?
If you want to look online, there's a handful of Flash games. I worked on one called Trials of Droids with a friend of mine that was kind of like a co-op. Well, it wasn't even co-op. You switch between these two robots, and it was a puzzle platformer. There are a handful of like RPG style projects, like stuff that would kind of lend it like a Diablo clone-ish type games. And then with a robot named Fight, like a lot of different ideas as far as map generation. Like it started out with like back in Flash days 10 years ago or whatever when I was going to work with it, having like a skill trees and like a XP mechanic and stuff like that. So
I'm curious, given that there's it almost feels like there's some base components that could be made available. Have you considered somewhere down the line as either an update or maybe something to include in a sequel to make it really stand apart from the first, a mode where the player can actually go in and kind of take some of the baseline pieces and arrange it together in their own layout?
I've gotten asked about workshop content a bunch. I'd really love to be able to give those tools, like a tile map editor or something like that, to where people could maybe create their own rooms for the game and have those show up in their runs, or create their own layouts. Like that would probably be the easiest thing to do if I were to approach it, would be let people take those pre-existing rooms and arrange them how they like to kind of craft their own Metroid map. Stuff like that would be really interesting. It's just kind of tricky to pull off, and then like have the tools can be there, but then to have tools where people can share that and make it meaningful, and then like get feedback on it and like kind of create a community around it. That would be the challenge, I think. So,
because I mean, obviously the market's there for it. Mario Maker 1 and 2 have both done exceedingly well. You have, I think you probably more than anybody probably have the most groundwork laid to be able to get in to do a Maker game in a genre outside of Mario, or I suppose RPG makers, gotten there too, years ago. But it's something that has been talked about. Like, we've got Mario Maker. What's Nintendo's next Maker series? It kind of feels like you're in a unique position to beat them to the punch at their own game.
That'd be cool, but I don't know. That's a lot of work. Like a Maker game, it's crazy. Like you have to think about the interactions between so many different elements and stuff like that. But I like the idea.
I know back in the earlier days, like Super Art, like RC Pro-Am and stuff, you was able to make your own racing tracks and stuff like that. So that was kind of like the first level creation and things to have, but you're just going to share with other people around the world.
Well, I got started in game development, like playing Doom and Quake and like making maps and stuff for that. I mean, none of them were ever anything other than I played them on my own, maybe post them on a website or whatever. But like modding is really important, I think. Like it lets people learn how to make games. So I'd like to start branching in that direction. It's just solo dev team person, like working on too many things all at once.
I think one of a great one will also be like the SimCity games, Roller Coaster Tycoon and stuff, because just to get an idea on how you want to learn how to do layout and stuff, in case you don't want to draw or anything, like doing layout and stuff. I think that's a good idea for people who want to help create games and stuff like that.
Oh yeah, just like early games like SimCity and stuff where you kind of use tools and build stuff. Yeah. I like that there's more and more of these like there's programming games now. I think that's really cool.
Yeah.
Like, is you and games where you like explore logic and you get this like physical or visual interface to do stuff like that. That's really awesome.
So, anything special you want to plug? I think we're kind of coming to a natural close here.
Getting there too. I think the game it's available on Switch and Steam right now for $12.99. It goes on sale a lot. I'm not saying don't buy it now. If you like me, please do. But otherwise, it will be on sale later. And then I've got a Patreon.
$12.99. You get a ton of game. Like
it is. I think it's worth the
price of admission.
$12.99. I've heard multiple people have said, yeah, you could charge $20 for this, but I don't know.
Solidly.
And then Patreon. I've got a Patreon where I've been trying to raise money for the continued development of A Robot Named Fight. It's patreon.com/A Robot Named Fight. If you don't like Patreon for any reason, I've also got like a coffee set up, KOFI. That's another service. So I take a lot of donations to continue making games from one guy in his house. But yeah, and then follow A Robot Named Fight on Twitter, @RobotNameFight, because we couldn't have the full thing, so we made the @ the A. I think that's all my plugs. Yeah, I really appreciate you guys having me on.
We appreciate having you.
We had an absolute ball.
Oh,
can I ask you just one last question? This is gonna sound weird. The Mystical Ninja, that game from Konami. Would you ever design a game like that, or have you ever thought about using other graphic styles in designing games?
Mystical Ninja? I don't know it. Hang on real quick. I'll answer your question by looking it up.
Okay.
You're talking just in terms of like deviation in like art style, correct, Eddie?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. But also actually doing like Mystical Ninja, because that's kind of, it's not randomly generated, but the way that you move around in that world and fight. And
yeah, like the like pseudo like 2.5D.
Yeah.
I've thought about it. I don't know. Like for a beat 'em up, of course, you'd do something like that, but it would just.
Oh, we froze again.
Oh no.
We'll give it a second. He came back pretty quick the first time.
Last time, yeah. I want to play Mystical Ninja.
Eddie just wants more Goemon in his life.
I need it. I think it was fun. I'm not gonna lie.
Oh.
That and Alien Syndrome. I don't know why I want to play that for. Look, I'm an old person. I can't help it to play about the games. I love you, Kathy.
You're old.
I just got that look from you.
I'm gonna say, don't you complain about being old over there, Eddie.
I think maybe there's some audio happening. There it is. We lost you for a minute as you were just jumping into that answer.
Yeah, I just saying, maybe. Depends.
Yeah, I was just saying that I love Mystical Ninja and I want to play it, and that in Alien Syndrome. Again, that Sega made.
I like Alien Syndrome. Small Mega Master System games.
Yeah, I could not beat that game at all, and I don't know why.
It's cool.
So, real quick before we sign off, you're the reward for making it to the end of our show for those still listening. I want to drop the last Steam key on the recording here instead of the Twitch chat, and it's a first come first serve. So if you're tuning in and grabbing our show as we upload it immediately, here's your chance for freebies. Last one, T5WL0ZLI4KMHXG is your free copy of A Robot Named Fight. Go enjoy the hell out of that shit because it's awesome.
Yes, it is.
Well, thank you guys.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. I mean, again, always welcome. Would love to have you back. As things in the future develop and maybe there's new exciting things to talk about, we'd love to have you have you back again to do just that. So,
Absolutely. I'll keep you updated on that pinball game.
hell
Yeah.
yes.
All right. Bye, everybody.
All right,
Good
take it
night.
easy.
Right. And everybody, that's all we have for you guys for World War One podcast. And we will see you next time. Bye, everybody.
Peace.